Well, good afternoon and welcome to today's session, which is the holiday safety trap, what leaders miss until it's too late. My name is Holly Foxworth. I am a registered nurse and the Director of Marketing Communications here at Axiom Medical, and I'm going to get to be your host today, which I'm tickled about as always, but it looks like we have a few more that are still trying to join. So tell us, what's your favorite Christmas movie? We'll start there. I was going to ask where everybody was coming from, but Kane had a better idea about Christmas movies. Tell us your favorite Christmas movie. Derek, what are you going with?
I think you're putting me on the spot. I mean, I like old school classics. I like White Christmas. White Christmas is my favorite.
Oh, wow.
That is a good one.
My kids really like Home Alone, probably.
Yeah. Home Alone is a great one. Yeah. Ooh, Christmas Vacation. Yes, definitely. The Grinch. Die Hard.
We got a Die Hard.
The Die Hard on here.
Of course he did.
We were telling Scott earlier, he said the Die Hard, and we thought, really? The Holiday, Wonderful Life? Yes, absolutely. These are fantastic. I love them. All right, good deal. Well, I appreciate you guys joining us today. And today's session is really going to cut straight to kind of the risks that we're talking about and some of those risks that rise between that time period of Thanksgiving and then all the way up to New Year's Day. So that's really where we start to see some of that distraction. We see the fatigue, we see stress. All of those seem to create these conditions that drive our injury rates up. Many times in most industries, that's above 20% during this time period. So that's why it's so crucial that we understand kind of where those pieces are, where things can go wrong, so that we can lead those on the right path and try to avoid some of those. But we do have a fantastic panel that's here joining us today. We brought in several different perspectives. We have Dr. Scott Cherry, as always, our Chief Medical Officer. He'll be able to share from a medical perspective kind of what's going on, what we're talking through, and how that impacts the body and what you can expect to see in some of your employees. We also have Darla Wheeler. She is our Chief Marketing Officer and EVP Product and Innovation. She always brings great leadership tips. We love her, all the tips that she has. She always has the best ideas and seems to have the best things to say, especially when it comes to speaking with your employees around sensitive topics, especially around the season. Then we have Darla Miller, who is a nurse client liaison here at Axiom. She'll be able to share kind of what she's seeing with our clients and population health perspective. And then we also have my fellow Christmas enthusiast, Hailey Hamilton. She's a EHS Program Manager for Juniper, and she's going to be able to share kind of what's going on with those in the field. But before we get started, there's two things that I wanted to ask of you. The first is to look at the upper right-hand side of your screen. And so there you should see an RSVP button, and that is for our January event. So we are kicking it off strong. We actually are doing a partnership, so a co-branded event with the AMCS group. And so we're going to be delivering your 2026 OSHA playbook and talking about why it is that your compliance really kind of gives you that competitive advantage. So you might find yourself surprised there. We also like to play that is it recordable game. So if you haven't experienced that before, everyone seems to love that game. And it's always fun to go through the different scenarios to determine whether an outcome would be recordable or not. But we definitely would love to have you for that. And if you haven't already, press that RSVP button. You don't have to do anything extra, and they'll go ahead and send you that calendar invite to get on your schedule. And again, that's January the 15th at 1:00 p.m. The second thing that I was going to say is that we love to hear from you, just like how you interacted in the chat with us for what your favorite Christmas movie is. We want you to share. If there's a question, you can use the Q&A box that's there. If you have a comment that you want to share, any types of stories or experiences, what you're seeing at your workplaces, anything that you want to share that you feel like would be helpful to anybody in this audience, I would encourage you to do so. And there's also a perk that comes with that. I do like to send out some gifts after these events, and those are usually sent. First place I go to is the Q&A box and the engagement chat there, and that's where I pull the names from. So if you like free gifts, then definitely that's where you want to be. lastly, we do have the slides. They're located down there at the bottom of your screen, along with some additional resources. And then, as always, we'll send out the 24-hour replay then tomorrow that will have the additional information in case you want to share that with any of your staff or any of your colleagues there. So let's go ahead and meet our panel. Dr. Cherry, I'm going to come to you first.
Well, happy holidays. And what was the movie that we weren't supposed to love? Die Hard. Yes, that's not my favorite movie. But good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Cherry. I'm Axiom Medical's Chief Medical Officer. My professional background is I'm board certified in preventive and occupational health, and I've been supporting industry and the military for the past 15 to 20 years, and it's a pleasure to be with you.
Fantastic. Pleasure to have you, Dr. Cherry. How about you, Darla Wheeler?
Hi, everybody. Happy December. It is almost 2026, and I'm really excited to finish off the year strong. I've been at Axiom for almost 20 years next year, and I love what I do for this company and our clients, and we're really excited to have one of our clients here today.
Absolutely. How about you, Miss Darla?
Of course. Well, I'm kind of torn between Christmas Vacation and Elf.
Those are two good ones. Very good ones.
Yeah, I might be known to say son of a nutcracker every now and then, so...
That's cute. I don't think I've ever heard that. That's
From
pretty
Elf,
cute.
It's a great movie. I'm very happy to be here today. I have been a nurse going on close to 23 years, but this month I actually celebrate my 5-year anniversary here at Axiom. For a couple of years, I was one of those registered nurses that handled those injury calls when they were placed to Axiom Medical. And now I'm part of the Client Liaison team. And to echo what Dara said, I love what I do. I love being a part of this team and helping improve the safety culture with all of our clients.
Fantastic. And you do such a wonderful job at it, Darla. We appreciate you joining us today. All right, Miss Hailey, how about you?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hailey Hamilton. Favorite Christmas movie is Christmas Vacation. There's no competition if you're familiar with the 'tis the season to be merry scene at the shopping mall. I think it's the greatest interaction of all time in film, but it's just a personal opinion. I am the EHS Programs Manager for Juniper Landscaping. But before that, I was in operations most of my career. I spent 13 years at Walt Disney World here in Orlando, Florida. So I've seen some stuff around the holidays. It's one of those things when you work in hospitality, when everyone else is enjoying their downtime, we're probably the busiest because you're enjoying your downtime with us. So I definitely have some perspective from that situation. I've also spent some time with Lyft, but I'm excited to be here today with my Axiom friends because Christmas. Love it.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us. I think this is going to be a fantastic event that we're going through today. Just to kind of give you an idea of what it is that we're going to go through. We'll definitely go through some of those, the safety traps that we talked about and how it is that you can kind of avoid some of those. We'll get into some of the tactics that you can use to keep those injuries down while you're also keeping your employee spirits up. We're going to talk about how it is that stress impacts some of the outcomes that you're seeing and what's happening within your environments. And then also we'll give you kind of some strategies for balancing that lever that goes between compliance and compassion. So there's a fine line that kind of comes between there, especially during this time of year. So that is what we'll be going on with. And so in terms of what is going on with you guys, we wanted to know what you're seeing at your organizations and how your employees are feeling this time of year. So we have our first poll question up, and that is, how would you describe your team's safety mindset during the holidays? So would that be laser focused? Are they really focused on what's going on? Would you say that they're distracted and tired? Maybe we think they're safe, but we're not really sure. That one I could see coming up a lot. And then the last choice would be, it depends on the week. So tell us what your thoughts are. Tell us what's happening with your employees there. Dr. Cherry, what do you anticipate that we'll see the most?
These are all pretty equal, I think. I think distracted and tired.
It looks like that's what we're seeing a lot of. Yeah, significant. We have a lot of B and C's. We've got an A. Good for you, Jake. That's fantastic. But yes, definitely we understand the piece about the distracted and tired. It's one of those times of years where it's hard on everybody. Darla, any thoughts there?
I feel like a lot of people would gravitate towards C. I think a lot of people think they're doing okay and they're fine. But that word fine can be kind of tricky, especially if you start to go back and kind of look at the trends in the data, you can kind of see it may be otherwise.
Absolutely. How about you, Hailey?
I think distracted and tired totally makes sense, especially from an operations standpoint where you have customers and stakeholders that often just require so much more attention and so much more of your energy this time of year, which leaves less and less for yourself.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Well, it looks like that the majority of the audience agrees with you as well. And so it seems like that we're all kind of going through the same type of experience there where we're a little bit tired this time of year, especially with all the engagements that pop up on our calendars and all the commitments that we make, et cetera. So we'll go ahead and get started. And Hailey, I'm actually going to come to you first. And so talk to us about why this is the season of distraction.
Well, I think it makes sense because you have deadlines piling up, you have personal things that are going on, a lot of travel going on. There's a lot of emotion around the holidays. So I think that causes people to rush. I think it caused people to cut corners. I think that's a huge distraction, right? It's a fun distraction, but a distraction nonetheless.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, I put the picture there of the holiday lights and I'm sure you remember it. It wasn't this Christmas, it was the Christmas prior, but there was an employee that he was tasked with putting the lights up in the trees for their organization. And same thing, you know, skipped the assessment. He was using a pole extension and actually touched one of those wires and was electrocuted. So, you know, we think that some of these accidents that they may be minor, but there are some significant ones that can occur during this time of year. Do you see those on your side as well, Hailey?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a perfect example that where you have a routine task and sometimes people just become complacent or aren't as focused on what they need to be focused on. And I think, you know, when we look at our incidents, so many of them trace back to the same thing: people rushing, people being overconfident in their skills, and people just being tired. It's the time of year for all of that.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, any thoughts there, Darren? Do you find yourself rushing around this time of year?
I don't know what you were talking about, Holly. I would never. I am so slow and methodical in everything I do. Yeah, I think that it is just a time where, you know, I think Dr. Cherry has been speaking about this quite a bit this year about fatigue. And I think in general, we're seeing that fatigue is one of those things that seems like such a no-brainer to pay attention to. But we all, especially in this culture, just keep running on caffeine and lack of sleep. And I think it's going to continue to have consequences if we don't pay attention to it.
Dara, does that mean that you're judging me with my Coke that I have here?
Maybe. You've also been hydrating with some water.
I told her that I was drinking water today. Yeah. Well, you bring up a really good point, especially when it comes to the fatigue piece. And that is one that it feels like that we're seeing a lot of. Dr. Cherry, I'll come to you, but explain to us why it is that we're seeing that. How does fatigue come in? How is that affecting what's going on with our employees and their performance?
Well, even if we exclude the holidays for a second, we're seeing really like an epidemic of fatigue and sleep deprivation without the holiday stress, right? And so when we hit the holiday stresses, it's in medicine, we call it like an acute on chronic condition, right? So you might have, it's classic in like emphysema or COPD where someone has poor lung function, but then if they get an infection, then it's exponentially worse. So Yeah, we've been really looking at fatigue, cognitive fatigue and sleep deprivation a lot. And it really does impact both physical and mental. You know, some of the stats are really compelling. And I think Darla really hit the nail on the head earlier when she said everyone feels fine and you really don't. And so there's actually compelling studies that sleep deprivation, depending on how many hours you've been awake, is akin to a certain blood alcohol level. So I think we've all experienced it where a friend may have had too much to drink, but they feel fine to drive. So you lack that insight into yourself about your limitations. And so I think one of the most compelling stats is just being awake for 17 hours is akin to a 0.05 blood alcohol level, which is right below, I think, the legal limit to drive. But what that really means is if you've only slept for 7 hours or, you know, and then you've been awake right before bedtime, you're kind of right there. So if you're sleeping less than 7 hours, by default, every evening before bed. So, you know, that's really interesting. Now, if you stay awake for the full 24 hours, you're over the legal limit from a subjective matter, right? You might have a blood alcohol level, or you behave like you have a blood alcohol level of 0.1, which is above the legal limit. So, you know, I think we take it for granted, or we're very complacent about sleep deprivation, but it really has huge implications. And then when we look at statistics with injuries, again, sleep deprivation and physical and mental fatigue have a huge risk of injury.
Absolutely. You know, there was a question that came in that I was going to ask you as well, but, you know, what are some of the signs that you would see from your employees that would indicate that they're experiencing some of this fatigue?
You know, I think we kind of know it intuitively, but we haven't thought about it concretely. So someone yawning, you know, heavy eyes, slow to respond, making little mistakes, slurred speech, you know, almost something where you've seen someone been drinking a little bit or just very tired. So I think that's an easy kind of ballpark test.
Yeah, definitely. Hailey, I mean, have you seen this with any of your employees, whether it's at your current employer or at priors?
Yeah, for sure. And I think very similarly to what Dr. Cherry was saying about signs of fatigue, you can also pick up on signs of people rushing too much that are very similarly tied. You know, everybody, you know, your employees, you know, your workers better than anyone, and they have a baseline. They have the way that they normally behave. You know what that's like, you know, how that they communicate, how they move through their tasks, how they do their work. When suddenly you notice differences in that, like they're speeding up or there's not as much conversation or the chatter goes quiet, people start skipping those important steps. And that's where the red flags are. So you're looking for things out in the field like missing PPE or a checklist where a check went unmarked, or something that's a simple error that typically wouldn't be standard for that employee. That's a great sign that people need to slow down and give some more focus to what they're doing.
Oh, those are excellent points. Yes. Dr. Cherry, I was going to ask you too about, you know, we see an increase in some of the behavioral health consults during this time period. In fact, ours go up about 22%. Is that consistent? And would you say that you feel like that's pretty consistent across all industries, or do you see that there's some that maybe be more affected than others?
Yeah, I think in general, you know, this time of year, things are going to exacerbate versus calm down. Even before I was in medicine, when I was maybe just out of high school, I remember one of my friends telling me, or he really was a mentor, he really said he didn't like to interact during the holidays because he would get essentially depressed, which sounded very counterintuitive when I was naive to this experience. But the holidays can be an actual huge draw or drag on mental health for many reasons. It could be financial reasons. It can be social connection reasons where our relationships maybe aren't as good as we would hope them to be with family members and friends. And so and then I think it is pushed across. It's probably worse in some industries than others. Hailey, you mentioned being in hospitality, where it's actually even more stressful. So you don't even have the choice maybe to be with your family, and so I was actually presenting at an oil and gas conference last week, and one of the safety professionals said that suicide across oil and gas was higher than law enforcement recently. So that was news to me. So, I think there's a lot of well-established high-risk worker populations, but I don't think anyone is immune to it anymore.
Mm-hmm. I'd be interested in what you guys are seeing as well. If you want to put that in the chat, and we'd definitely be interested in hearing what you are. There was a comment, Michael was saying that suicide rates increase as well. You're exactly right. Yeah. Do you feel like that the suicide piece that you'd mentioned that's gone up in oil and gas? Do you feel like that there's any particular things that we could tie that to? Like, do you feel like that is just a mental health problem in general, or do you feel like that it could be work that's impacting that could be kind of pushing them further forward where they feel like they're in distress? What do you think could be associated with that?
Well, I'll share a little bit of what this individual shared with the group. He felt like it might even be generational. Like he felt like younger populations may be experiencing more anxiety and stress in the workplace than older generations. And I know there's some talk about that perhaps, but it's really hard to say. I think everyone has we belong to different groups per se, but everyone still has individual risk factors that, provide resilience or provide more at risk, make you more at risk. But you want to at least try to have a connection with one other person, I would say. A lot of people actually have zero friends in the workplace or even in their life, and that's the wrong number. Having one or two good connections can really make a huge difference where you check in on each other. It's still not a fail-safe, but it dramatically provides a lot of support and protection. We're seeing that in longevity studies where actually your social connections might be the strongest driver of longevity. And I'm talking even in comparison to smoking and not exercising. And so that's very compelling. Some of the blue zone studies have shown where, everyone knows about the Mediterranean diet and people living really long, but when they move to America, they might be actually eating, fast food and things like that, but still living to 100 because of that social network has come with them. But anyway, I think having at least one good connection is really something we should all focus on.
Absolutely. Angela brought up a good point. She was saying long hours away from families for long periods and things like that. I'm sure that especially anybody that works shift work, those that are doing the 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, that has to be hard on not just them, but also their family members there. Kelly, also great point. She just said huge emphasis on high levels of suicide and violence. Interesting, the violence piece in general in the construction industry. That's interesting that she had mentioned the violence piece. Do you see that as well, Dr. Cherry?
That's very interesting because we've also been looking at environmental factors and how they relate to injury rates. So, Dara and I had figured out that inside of our own data where heat drives all types of injuries. And we actually, I know this from psychology where when the temperature rises, violent crimes dramatically rise. And if you think through it through first principles, we have all coping mechanisms, right? Like I don't know if everyone's seen that movie, Ally McBeal, where it was this attorney who would have these thoughts of reacting very extremely to a stimulus, but it was just in her mind. But our coping mechanism helps us calm down. But as we get more fatigued physically, mentally, cognitively, emotionally, our coping mechanisms drop significantly. And if they drop below a certain threshold, we actually cannot control our behavior. That's that's one job of our prefrontal cortex, which is our big part of the front of our brain here. But our animal or our lizard brain takes over. We're constantly suppressing the lizard brain. So yes, when we're tired, it definitely comes out. And I think we all know this. When you're tired, hungry, stressed, we tend to act at our worst on average. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rick had also pointed out political differences more than ever, keeping families from coming together. Dara, do you ever see that at your table at the holidays? And any political differences there?
No. No. We mostly keep it clean.
Keep it clean. That's pretty good. I'm seeing also talking about technology, digital interruptions, things like that. Definitely, that makes a whole lot of sense. Darla, what are you seeing whenever you talk to clients?
Usually what we see with clients is they're kind of questioning, why did things kind of escalate? And I feel like a lot of the times, again, they're missing out on some of those early warning signs. As Hailey and Dr. Cherry mentioned, employees are looking for those shortcuts. They're trying to work faster. And honestly, that's when those little bitty mistakes can really lead to those more serious injuries. So I think it's really important for leaders to kind of create that space where employees can come to them, they can talk about things, they feel safe to speak up. If they notice or observe employees, cutting corners, missing that attention to detail. And I think when leaders can kind of step into that role and truly have that connection with that employee, Dr. Cherry mentioning that connection is so important this time of year. I think that shifts that focus back to that worker and helps them feel that they do matter. And they're not just looking for that productivity or that output. At the end of the day, we all want to kind of be seen and heard.
Absolutely. Patricia had said the company I work for, overall suicide rate has increased. Occupational health team provides managing mental health training for all, the mandatory training. That's fantastic. We always love to hear that there's mental health training that's going on within your work environments. That makes a huge difference. It's significant. I've always said that that's one of the best trainings I've ever attended in my entire career was some of that. Dara, I'll come to you and ask from a leadership perspective, are there anything that you would recommend? You speak with executives all day. What would you say that is there any one particular thing that may kind of shift some of that mindset within December that reduces the stress that you could say to employees?
Well, I think Hailey and Darla and Dr. Cherry have said a lot of the things that I would really highlight. And I think the one thing I talk a lot about just in general with employee support and performance is trends. And like we were talking about, if you're watching behaviors, it's not necessarily the behavior that might be the indicator, but it's a shift in behavior. It's how are people changing? If somebody's normally kind of a laid back, quiet person, but then all of a sudden is acting different to what their norm is, that's what I really pay attention to, patterns and how people are responding and showing up. But from a general perspective, I really like what Darla said, just checking in on people and being able to give them the ability to slow down a little bit during that time and give them permission to reduce some of that feeling of needing to be productive.
Jake had mentioned in the chat here, and he mentioned drinking, that's usually what some will turn to. And that brings up another topic of substance abuse during this time period. Hailey, do you ever face this with any of your employees that you have?
I mean, it definitely depends on the industry that you're involved with. And I think it comes back again to looking out for those little warning signs that Dr. Cherry specifically talked about. And I think it's things too, like acknowledging that you're present, acknowledging that you are there for people, acknowledging that that you are there to support them if they need you. We often joke that in leadership, you're not just a manager, you're a counselor, you're a parent, you fill all these roles, and having those I would say routine check-ins, right? Because if you come up to someone, you say, how's your mental health today? That can feel a little heavy, right? Like that can feel a little off-putting. So if it's something that's more routine and you're saying, how's your week going? Is anything getting in your way today? Or how can I help you to make your day easier? When you're having those casual, low pressure conversations, people are more willing to share and people are more willing to open up about the struggles that they're having. And I think that the key is consistency. If you're making those check-ins part of your normal everyday routine, then it doesn't feel like such a big deal, and it just starts feeling like support from your leadership and from the people that care about you.
I love that.
Absolutely.
That point, you know, making it just part of your usual, if you have one-on-ones, if you have regular check-ins, it doesn't always have to be about tasks. It can be just, how are you? The other thing I would say from a leadership and executive perspective, really planning for this, you know, I think the time of year hits every year, we're all a little bit like, oh, here it is again. Oh, here it is again. But it is very cyclical. And one thing that there's very practical things you could do really early in the year to not feel as overwhelmed this time of year leading teams or working with teams. Like I used to make my team put their PTO in for the whole year. So it's something that it's like, we really want people to take time off. We really want people to be able to have some time away and decompress. And I kind of force it, because then what would happen historically year over year is we get to the end of the year and people have all this unused PTO and they would scramble to take it. And then that was almost its own stress, just trying to take your PTO and trying to get coverage and trying to manage all of the team. And so I really like trying to get that. Of course, things come up and you need to adjust, but being able to plan ahead. We know this data. We know it hits every year. We know that there's stress and scrambling and all these things. So the earlier in the year you kind of just say, okay, we're going to organize a little bit and make sure that people feel supported and can take time off when they need to. That's a really critical way of managing policy throughout the year to really encourage the better feelings at the end of the year.
Absolutely. Ms. Crawford, you're exactly right as well. She was talking about that within their team, that they check in with each other, that they make that a regular part of their daily routine. I really like that. I think that's really significant. Darla, I'll come to you. We talk about things that kind of go by the wayside sometimes, and compliance is one of those. It kind of comes up as this blind spot that we have, where we see that injuries are going up and things are kind of going, they're spiraling out of control, and we're seeing behaviors that we don't normally see, or maybe performance is going down. Talk to us about why we see that we're seeing some of these compliance changes that occurs, and what to be looking for.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of people, again, they're rushing, right? And you kind of go, okay, I'm fine. We'll get around to that. We'll report that later. And really coming from that nursing aspect, we want to be proactive with those injuries. And we always say here, we want to get ahead of it, right? So when you have something that happens, there's that natural body process that's going to begin, whether it's inflammation or that infection process that we're chasing. And my opinion, oftentimes when you see that delayed reporting, employees, they're truly delaying that care as well. They're not performing first aid, they're not doing any care at all, or if they are, they're doing the wrong care. And so then it just cascades all of those symptoms, and they just escalate to where it's a lot more harder to manage those symptoms and kind of keep that injury controlled. So that's one of the things that we talk about a lot with reporting of injuries. Definitely don't delay that. Also, we all kind of know, yes, it's the holidays, but I don't think OSHA goes on holiday. So you're still going to have to be in compliance and make sure you're following all of those regulations and not delaying care.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts there about ways that you could maybe work with your employees to prevent that from becoming an issue, the delayed reporting? What would you encourage leaders to do?
I mean, I hate to overuse the word culture, But that's such an important component of making sure that the employees know what to do. They know what that safety culture is. We kind of talked about PTO, maybe employees working extra shifts. Maybe they're picking up and working shifts they don't normally participate in. So really kind of having a whole holiday roadmap so that employees know who to report to. They know what that process is. If their typical manager's out or on PTO, you want to remove any of that guesswork for your workers. You want to have that clear and concise communication so they know exactly what to do and how to continue to report those injuries.
Absolutely. Hailey, one of the things that also comes up around this time is company-sponsored events. I don't know whether your organization has Christmas parties, but, those seem to always come up. It's like, the decision of, are you going to have a hosted event? And if so, are you going to serve alcohol? And if so, are you providing, transportation to employees? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think, typically we do something more along a cookout or something where everyone can come and be celebrated without taking it to a next level of it being too much of a party. And I think to touch a little bit too, because Darla, you actually said something that triggered something for me. And I know that my boss is actually on the call, Kelly. And one of the things that you need to do about reporting is to make sure that it is consequence free, right? Like people need to be able to feel comfortable in reporting an injury. And I would challenge you, if you go to your workplace and you see any of those X amount of days without injury boards at your workplace, to just rip them down. Because, you don't want to be the one that reports an injury and completely derails the free pizza at 100 days without an injury or something like that. It needs to be something that is completely consequence free to get people to report those, because nobody wants to be that cog in the wheel.
Mm-hmm. Angela mentioned they put in an incident hotline, and so there's somebody that's there from their EHS team that's available 24/7. I like that idea. We're also 24/7. I'm sure there's a lot of organizations that are 24/7, but just making sure that they know how to access that information, how it is that you would report that. Especially, I would think maybe with decreased staffing, sometimes you would have people that would normally be in some of those shifts that would be working, and they may not always understand some of the procedures and processes there. Darla, do you guys see that whenever you're meeting with some of the different clients?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There's just a lot of shifting around this time of year, and that's normal. And you want that shifting, right? Like you want people to take their PTO. You want to have that downtime and be intentional with it. We get a lot of communication from our clients. Hey, I'm going to be going on PTO. If you have a problem, reach out to this person. So we love having that communication, again, removing that guesswork. It just helps us so much, and we're able to really facilitate care a lot faster when we need to.
Absolutely. Kind of looking at everything from a larger perspective, whenever we look at some of these lessons here that we're seeing from one organization to the next, what is it that good leaders are doing differently? And I'll come to you first, Hailey, and I would like to hear from all of you on this one, but what would you say that the good leaders are doing differently within organizations?
I think recognition is huge. And I'm not, talking the 100-person pizza party. I'm saying just a little bit of recognition goes a long way. Something simple like thanking employees for coming to work. Like, this is the time of the year when you're working with a skeleton crew. You have people that aren't coming in, so someone has to work longer shifts to cover up for them. Or you have people that are trying to pick up all those extra shifts because they want to make, a little extra money and make a great Christmas for their family. So I think it's those leaders who are recognizing the extra effort that people are putting in, and when they go above and beyond the norm, and just something that says, I see you, I appreciate you, thank you for being here, thank you for being part of the team.
Absolutely. Dr. Sherry, what are your thoughts? What would you say in terms of
I'm going to steal it from a client we were talking with maybe a year ago. And I love this metric. So he kind of has a good metric of looking at his safety culture by reports of near misses to true incidents. So you could look at the extremes, right? So if no one's reporting near misses, you have 0 near misses to whatever number of incidents. So, that's zeros. That's a sign that no one's really feeling safe coming forward to report a near miss. So if you have, if you trend that ratio and as that ratio gets higher, right, because your incidents should actually go down. And if your near miss reports are if there's this culture of being able to feel safe to talk about these near misses, that should go up. So I think institutions that use that metric can actually really portray to the workforce, like, we are actively looking for near misses so we can prevent the incidents from happening. But it's a subtle nuance, but I think it's very powerful.
I agree. Dara, how about you?
I really love what Hailey said about ripping the sign off the wall.
Yeah.
I a lot of leadership and companies take a bit of a punitive approach around this. And I was talking to a new customer, and we were talking about the positive back to culture. It's if you share the wins begat more wins, and it just becomes this really positive experience for everybody. And the more everybody kind of buys into that, the more it just starts to snowball into something really positive. So I really love encouraging the positive reward side of this. Like, I love the person that said that they have the 24-hour hotline. We want people reporting. We want people engaging in this. The more they do, the better it is. And so I think that's a really great way to look at it.
Great. Michael had mentioned leading indicators. Darla, what are your thoughts? What may be some leading indicators that you would maybe be watching around this time period?
I'm sorry, did you say me, Holly?
I did. Yeah, I was asking, somebody had mentioned leading indicators, and so I was asking if you would maybe kind of elaborate on what type of leading indicators that you may be watching for this time of year.
Right. So again, we like to use a lot of our technology. We're kind of leveraging that, looking for trends in accidents and injuries. Again, reporting those near misses, as everybody kind of mentioned. So again, going back to that culture and trying to shift to those leading indicators, maybe scheduling those annual refreshers. I always think that's a really good thing to do. We do a lot of that on the NCL team at the end of the year. We're capturing maybe new employees that have joined that organization throughout the year. So that is probably one of our busiest times of the year, is kind of doing that yearly refresh and training with our clients.
I noticed that Rick had brought up an issue that we really haven't touched on, but he was bringing up the topic of financial issues that employees may be experiencing. Dara, in fact, from your HR days, how would you address that with employees that are facing some of that financial stress?
A lot of people don't know that EAPs can help with financial issues as well. So if your company offers an EAP, that is a great resource. We have what's called Wellness Wednesday at Axiom, and this was something that got kicked off post-COVID because we found our own employees, we were pretty stressed. We have a staff of nurses. You can imagine our nursing staff and our teams managing COVID cases were pretty burned out after that. We found this need to connect to people at work, separate from tasks and productivity and all the other conversations. So we've continued it for the last 5 years, or probably 3+ years. And Wellness Wednesdays, we talk about all sorts of things. And the leader that we have running Wellness Wednesdays is our Director of Behavioral Health and Absence Management, Sarah. Some of you have heard her on presentations before. And her topic yesterday was about financial health at this time of year. And it was such a great topic because it's exactly right. We're all thinking about it. It's a stressor. It's something that has gotten more difficult over the years as inflation has changed things. Even if you try to go the route of homemade gifts, or if you like to bake or things like that, those inputs are not all that cheap anymore either. And so coming up with ways even just talking about it as a group, I found my stress level decreasing just as a topic, going, hey, here's some different ideas or ways you can pool resources or do different things or think differently. But if somebody really is individually struggling with it, EAP is a great resource. Or there are some companies offer other financial supporting resources as well. So you just look at your employee benefits.
Really good point. Hailey, have you ever brought this up? I don't know if your organization does kind of like, toolbox talks or morning chats or huddles or whatever it is that you guys do, but have you guys ever addressed the financial perspective?
No, not specifically, but we do talk a lot about mental health and make sure that everyone knows about our EAP that is accessible to all of our employees. But I think the key there is it's important to balance the work and the emotional. So if you're in a company that does those toolbox talks, there's a great way to kind of combine them both, right? So talking about the consequences of rushing, talking about the consequences of complacency, and how those tie to your personal well-being, are not only beneficial to the job, beneficial to getting the job done in an efficient manner, but also beneficial to your long-term health.
Yeah. Well, I would ask all of you kind of what maybe one behavior that you've seen another leader doing during this month of December that's really kind of encouraged you. And Hailey, since you're already talking, maybe I'll start with you.
I think for me, like I'm huge on recognition, and I know I already mentioned that, but I think it comes back to recognition and just really appreciating your employees. They are, carrying more than you can see, and I'm pretty sure that goes for everyone. I can say that pretty confidently. So lead with a little extra grace, lead with a little extra more compassion and empathy, and recognize your team for putting in the effort that they're putting in.
Thank you. Dr. Sherry, what would your thoughts be? What have you seen? What have you observed from a leader this month that was encouraging to you?
Yeah. I think one of the most powerful things is checking in. So a supervisor that has the ability to check in, even just from an objective level of how are you doing, sincerely will make a huge difference. Because again, I think a lot of people are facing loneliness. And so having that potential open dialogue with someone at work is going to make a huge difference.
Agree. How about you, Darla?
Derek kind of already shared it, but we have the Wellness Wednesday here, and I always try to be such a positive person. And one of my favorite things with Axiom is in those meetings, even if we're talking about serious stuff, we're still trying to find the joy, right? We're looking for joy. We're looking for that laughter. And I really think that can also help build up resiliency. I think Dr. Cherry mentioned resiliency. And so always trying to circle back around to finding that joy, that laughter, building up that resiliency can just kind of give you that boost you need to get through this holiday season.
Agree. Dara, what are your thoughts?
Love everything we're all saying. I think, staying steady and staying the course and not trying to do too much in 1 month is important, and really setting everybody up for success in January. I think it's kind of getting a sense and making it okay for people to have some downtime. You might hear it in my voice. I am recovering from being sick, and that's what happens when you don't pay attention to needing downtime. So we've talked a lot about safety and injuries, but we have also seen infectious disease kick up pretty significantly this time of year. And so just paying attention to taking care of yourself, because what I always end up with is the situation where if I don't, my body's going to force it. So my body's going to say, okay, you need a break. Let's take some downtime, whether you want to or not. So paying attention to those stressors and those signs early intervention, we love it. We love it here. And it's like, just if you could do one thing well, pay attention early to everything, because then you're dealing less with some downstream consequences like like needing some tea and lemon and honey.
While you brought up the topic of Wellness Wednesday, and Marie had asked, how do you go about Wellness Wednesday, and was asking what, could you explain what that looks like for the team?
Looks like Brittany also jumped in with an example, but the origin of Wellness Wednesday was really funny. We did it as a reminder. We had launched a check-in app that was designed for people to check in to their own mental health and well-being. And we set the reminder in a calendar invite. And in that calendar invite, we accidentally made it a Teams meeting and sent it to the entire organization. So hundreds of employees. And the very first Wellness Wednesday, we were asking people to just check in on the app, but instead it became a Teams meeting. And so Dr. Curte and the whole team saw all of a sudden the Teams meeting pop up and went, "Ooh, this has become a meeting." So he jumped on. Employees were really looking to connect, and over the years we've kept it, and it's been just a 30-minute Teams meeting. And Sarah, our director of behavioral health, runs it, but it's very casual, and she might send out a topic. The topic is sometimes fun, sometimes serious. Whatever the topic, you can join if you have the 20-30 minutes. You can jump in, out, and all different people come. Our CEO comes, and I think we haven't necessarily mentioned this, but I know it's been something that we've alluded to. Top down on all of this makes a big difference. Our CEO participates in Wellness Wednesday because he finds value in those conversations and making sure he's setting the example for the organization. So leading from the top and having the CEO say it's okay to take 20-30 minutes to check in and connect is really critical. And so it can be anybody. And when they do it, like Darla said, sometimes it's silly, funny topics. We talk a lot about food. We like food. We like eating. It's a really great social environment to talk about it, but it's remote. We have employees all over the US. And so being able to connect in some way, even if it's just once in a while, is really a really nice feature at the company. And I think in our employee surveys every quarter, it is something that's mentioned every single quarter as something people love about the company.
Yeah. Hailey, it looks like Kelly said that you guys have Friday coffee talks.
Yes,
no talking
I was just
about
going to
work.
say that. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. So tell us about your coffee talks that you guys have.
It's just for our team, and every Friday, same time, same channel, and we're all remote as well, so we don't get to see each other very often as a team. So every Friday we take 30 minutes, and it's optional. If you got something else going on, then that's totally fine. But you're encouraged to bring your coffee or your tea or whatever you got, and just connect. And that's all we do. There's no agenda. There's no topic. We just kind of, what's going on this weekend? How was your week? But the one rule, the most important Kelly rule, is you cannot talk about work. So that has to stay on the table until 10:01, and then we can talk about work. But for 30 minutes, no work talk.
No work talk. So Dr. Sherry, if anybody wanted to implement, if they wanted to put together one of these Wellness Wednesdays or Coffee Talk Fridays or whatever else, would you suggest that they go about starting with policies and procedures, or just kind of put it together and let it organically occur? What way do you think?
It probably depends on the organization, how formal they are, how formal the leadership team is. I could see the benefits on both. I think just making sure there's some rules, or like if someone really does have, if it becomes apparent like someone really is in need, making sure at a minimum everyone kind of knows how to refer them to EAP, but even more so like how to engage more of a crisis that might evolve real time. But I think in general, though, most of the time this is going to be a very beneficial, positive, and resiliency building activity.
I agree. Dara, I saw that Rick had mentioned talking about going from the 125 Christmas bonus to a turkey to a stocking cap to a bag of popcorn as a Christmas gift. Christmas does not seem to hit the same at work. That just tickled me to death. But I'll ask you, what would you do to manage employee expectations around the holidays this time of year?
Oh man, that cracked me up. And I've got two nurses here on the call, and I know in the nursing world, it's the pizza party gets a lot of laughs.
It does.
It always seems a little bit like if you're gonna do the pizza party, let's just not. Yeah, I think things like the gift and the bonus, setting employee expectations, like you have to, again, just know your employees well and know what they value. Some people have very different values. Like I think Holly would prefer time off so she can go take some time and spend time with her family versus other, expectations. So it's, knowing your people, knowing what they care about, and not doing the gift that just in some ways feels worse than nothing. Don't do the pizza party for the ER nurses that are working the night shift. They'll eat the pizza, but they're not going to be happy about eating that pizza.
Pizza parties. I don't know who came up with the concept of pizza parties, but they have seen their day, and I hope that they go out of style and we don't have to continue to relive them with their. I did want to address one last thing before I come to you guys for final thoughts here, was that I liked what Patricia said about their wellness coaches, and they were talking about that they have healthy activities, that they talk about, what type of food that they're supposed to have, they're going to be able to help. Cherry, from a wellness perspective, what type of foods, what are good for your body this time of year that would help with resiliency?
I'll just kind of lead from like a population health perspective. We do see the prevalence of diabetes continuing to tick up from like 8% to maybe 10 or 12%, and even pre-diabetes up to maybe 30 or 40% of the population. So diabetes is essentially high blood sugar, and pre-diabetes is kind of elevated, but not at this range where frank diabetes is. So I think in many ways, being aware of how many carbohydrates you're intaking will dramatically affect that. And so, foods that are lower in carbs, or kind of having a mixed diet that has a nice mix of protein and fat along with the carbs. I think if you guys are serious about the pizza party thing, one of the downsides is pizza is primarily mostly carbs. And so when you only eat carbs, your blood sugar spikes dramatically. So your pancreas has to inject a lot of insulin. And then over time, your insulin becomes less effective. And then that's how you develop diabetes. So if you can have like a mix of the different macronutrients, fat, protein, and carbs, it actually lowers the absorption of sugar at that point. So, but lower carbs is better because we're very high carb oriented in America.
I think I'm pretty high at carb. I'm probably the most high carb oriented. I think that's my downfall. That
we're not talking about anyone. We're just talking about everyone.
It's your days as an XER nurse. It was all the pizza you ate, Holly. It just took you down a wrong path. Pizza and Coca-Colas.
Pizza and Coke. What more could you ask for? Yeah. Well, I'll just go around to each of you and just ask for your final thoughts. Just kind of wrapping up. What have you seen what were your final thoughts about December? If you wanted to give anybody one more tip on what it is that they may want to look at, and what are you looking forward to in January, real quick? And Hailey, I'll start with you.
I think the key message is just to slow down. Slowing down is a huge way to avoid injuries. I know myself as a Christmas enthusiast, I love we're using that word. I try to cram so much into December that I don't get enough sleep. And then I end up feeling really bummed in January because I didn't get to do everything that I wanted, because it's just not possible. So slow down, enjoy the moment, be present in the moment. But also take time to pause at work, take time to continue to ask yourself, am I doing this the safest way possible? And encourage that behavior as a leader out in the field, that if you see people rushing, just remind them there is nothing that is worth rushing for. Just slow down and focus on the task at hand.
That's absolutely right. And as we close out here, I'll ask if you share with the guests. You have to tell them how many Christmas trees that you have up this year, Hailey.
I put up 16 Christmas trees, 16
And she said
full-size
she
Christmas
scaled
trees.
back.
Wow. I did scale back.
Yeah. Christmas trees.
Yeah, really reining it in this year.
Wow. I love
Reining it in.
Reining it in, yeah.
Thank you, Dara.
Well, that is fantastic. I appreciate all of you joining us. If you haven't already, make for sure that you click that RSVP button. We definitely want to see you in January, and we wish you a happy holiday, and we'll see you next year. Take care.